Welcome to Meet the Filmmakers. We are here to talk about the film Lifeboat, which is playing in our first feature competition, and the movie will have its international premiere here in Estonia. And with me, we have director Josefine Kirkeskov, we have producer Mikkel Jersin, and we have the writer Nanna Westh. And we'll be talking a little bit about the film. I definitely urge you to check it out. It's about a couple on a romantic boat holiday who encounter a refugee woman in crisis. It's a suspenseful psychological thriller that keeps you on the edge of your seat, but also makes you think. So, if we could start from the very beginning with you, Josefine.
Yeah.
How did it all begin?
I think I wanted to make I was interested in the reaction that we have in Europe and in Denmark, especially when we had a lot of Syrian refugees coming. How we wanted to help. Many wanted to help, many didn't want to help. What was that situation all about? What is it that happens when it suddenly requires something of you that you can sit around the table and talk about that you want to help, but when the situation is actually there, what happens then? Many was confronted with that situation suddenly. And then we have a lot of films in Denmark about the Second World War, and I grew up with a lot of material in school with Second World War and what happened at that time and why didn't people react, what did they do. And so I wanted to make something about this situation that happens right now, which was really tough because you're in it yourself and you have to kind of like look at it from an outside, and that's hard because you're involved. But I think we as a filmmakers have a responsibility to do that and not only look at the past, because that's kind of like, yeah.
Yes. And if you could maybe continue here, Nanna, how did the script come about? Was it a long writing process, and had you worked with Josefine before?
No, it was our first time. Yeah, it was a great process. It was very it was a challenge. I think it was a very hard task to take on because it's such a disaster. It's so horrible what's going on. I just read that 34,000 people have died in the Mediterranean. So we wanted to. So our job was to try to find a way to expose that terror, or the meeting between what Josefine describes, our sort of privileged lives, and some people who come from something completely different. And so we wanted to make a personal story about a very big political problem.
Yeah.
And that was the challenge in it.
Mikkel, could you talk a little bit about how did you come on board the project, and how easy or difficult was it to get funding for this film, to make it?
Well, I entered the project because I wanted to work with Josefine, and Josefine, during our early talks, she went to Lesbos to actually help during the crisis. So I tried to send her various material about the subject, and eventually she came back with a story idea, and Nanna came into the project, and together they formed the whole story and everything. So, and in terms of financing, we were lucky to be funded by the Danish Film Institute. They have a talent development scheme called New Danish Screen, and they were very supportive from the beginning. And eventually it turned out to be a Croatian and Swedish co-production also. But everyone had a lot of belief in the project, and thought that the team was interesting, and new filmmakers combining with more experienced filmmakers and everything. So I think the financing process went rather smoothly. And
that's good to hear.
Yeah, and we were also lucky, of course. And this project was in a lower range in terms of budget, so that made it more easy as well.
Let's talk about filming on a boat. I can't imagine that being easy. And I mean, of course, one of the things that really works well is it is such a small space, and they are forced to deal with each other, and also through that deal with their own issues. And So if you could talk a little bit about that, how was it shooting on the boat? Did everybody get seasick?
Yeah, luckily I don't think anyone really suffered that hard from seasickness, but maybe I didn't see it, but I don't think they did. It was of course really intense, like a whole crew and cast on a not so big boat, but then we of course had another boat there, but that was just super intense. It's intense whenever you want to have a conversation with the photographer or one of the actors and you're like, let's just not go anywhere. Let's just stay here because there's no space, and let's just all listen to each other's talks all the time. And so in that sense, that was a little intense. But I think, of course, it also gives something to the film and to everything that you're so focused when you're there, because you kind of like feel the struggle around you, and it becomes part of the film. And we work with a very amazing creation team. That made it easier than it could have been to be in such a small place.
Even as a viewer, you really feel like you're on the boat when you're watching it, and because of the way the story evolves as well, and there's a constant guessing, like who's telling the truth and what happened in the past, and it's just it's kind of set up in a really, really great way. I want to talk about the cast and the casting process, and I want to mention the three main actors who are Sofia Helin, Paul Sverrehagen, and Shebnem Hassanizugi. What was it like? How did you find those actors? And because they do work beautifully together, creating this, almost a love triangle, basically.
Sophia was early on suggested to me, and I was very thrilled with the idea of getting to work with her, and I was so therefore very happy when she said yes. She is also very involved with she's how can you say, like, she has a big heart for the theme, both the what we already talked about with the refugee crisis, but also what the film also really is a lot about, being motherhood and things that we can say about that side of motherhood. But not to spoil the film, but she has a lot of things going on with these subjects herself, and so we very easily connected about developing onto the story. And Sophia actually was the one suggesting Paul.
Okay.
And I, at the beginning, thought that's never gonna happen because he's Norwegian, she's Swedish. I couldn't see myself directing in all of these different languages. But then I met with Paul, and he's a very, very brilliant actor, and then also a very sweet person who had so many great thoughts about the character also. So that ended up being definitely those two, and they worked together before, so we could build on to that dynamic. And with Shebnem, that was a long casting process in finding her, so we were just very thrilled to have her on board. Not so long before the shooting, actually.
Okay. What about, you've mentioned that Paul and Sophia had worked together before, but did you have a rehearsal process with the actors, or?
We had such little time. I mean, the whole film was made in a very short process, which was both like the very good thing about it, and also sometimes, of course, frustrating because the funding happened very easily. We could have spent more time, of course, writing. You can always do that, but everything went very fast. So in that sense, it comes, from with a lot of energy from your first instinct, and then not so much sitting and rethinking everything. And so because the cast was on quite late, we didn't have that much time to practice, but we were intensively together in the time of shooting. So
how long was the shooting process? How many days did you?
22 days in total.
Oh, wow.
Also, we were constrained by the fact that the tourist season in Croatia, it had to end before we could actually start filming, but we had to do it before the storms of the fall starts to happen too much. So there's only like a little gap where you can actually shoot a film, because on sea, because then the weather is too dramatic, and when you are on a boat, very little action on the water is actually very difficult when you are filming, because then it's too wavy and you can't. It's also dangerous. So,
did you encounter some sort of a storm, or were you lucky?
We had like the worst storm in 45 years or whatever.
In the middle of the night.
Yeah.
When
Actually,
we were
doing our biggest setup with most people called in for extra light and stunts and blah blah blah. So yeah, and that was when we were shooting some intense scenes where the actors had to be in water. So of course that didn't happen.
Wow.
And we had to rethink that whole scene and situation. Yeah.
It was a big drama.
That is something that kind of needs to happen when you're shooting on a boat, I guess.
Would you shoot on a boat again, or is this it?
I think I'm gonna wait a little while before making another film on a boat because, it is intense. But I think it was also really nice for us to work with that arena in the writing that it's so claustrophobic.
It was easy for me.
Yeah, it was very easy for you. So Nanna, maybe you want to do another film on a boat. Yeah. But it's a wonderful arena in that sense.
Okay, well, the movie will have its international premiere in Estonia. So you already had your world premiere. What has the reception been like to the movie? What was the feedback?
Really good, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Now we've talked about all of the political aspects of it, but really the film is not. It's more like a emotional drama.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we had a lot of great reviews of people taking those emotions in and had something to think about, which is making me very happy.
Yeah. Well, I'm afraid we're out of time. We'll continue the conversation with the Q&A later, and thank you so much, guys.
Thank you for having us.
And as I say, come check out the film, and thank you for joining us.